Embark on a journey through the chilling story of Kristin Rossum, a promising scientist whose life spirals into tragedy and betrayal. We invite you to delve into this haunting saga on Crime Briefs, where we explore the downfall of what seemed to be an impeccable family. Prepare for a story that will chill you to the bone. Kristin, once vibrant and ambitious, began to lose her grip as her dreams seemed increasingly out of reach. Her life became a series of skipped classes and attempts to find refuge from her growing despair. At first, alcohol seemed like a temporary haven, but its solace was short-lived, pushing her toward a more dangerous escape. That escape was methamphetamine, or meth, a drug with a notorious reputation for capturing its users in a destructive cycle. For Kristin, meth was a false paradise, offering momentary euphoria and escape from reality, but it also brought paranoia and hallucinations. Her behavior turned unpredictable, alarming her loved ones. A devastating turning point came when Kristin confessed her addiction to her parents, shattering their world. Her family, educated and professional, was thrust into chaos, struggling with conflict and despair. Unable to bear the pressure, Kristin, at 17, fled to Mexico with friends, seeking a break from her turmoil. In Mexico, amidst its vibrant life and beauty, she met Gregory, a man 7 years older. Gregory, with his charismatic presence, became a beacon of hope for Kristin. He offered her protection and support, willingly becoming her guardian angel through the storm of her addiction. With Gregory's help, Kristin fought her way through the storm of addiction and eventually founded a job as a toxicology assistant in a forensic department. Her talent in the field earned her respect, and her past struggles became a distant memory. Her job, which involved handling controlled substances, added a layer of intrigue to her already complex story. After earning her university degree with honors, Kristin received acclaim as the best student, a title that came without her knowledge of the deeper reasons fueling her passion. Kristin and Gregory's bond, strong and enduring, led them down the aisle in a heartfelt ceremony on June 5, 1999. Her parents, once wary, now fully embraced Gregory, celebrating Kristin's rise from the shadows of addiction into a hopeful future. By March 2000, Kristin had carved out a place for herself at the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office as a skilled toxicologist. Gregory, too, found his calling within the bustling biotech sector. Yet, as Kristin adapted to her new professional environment, the daily grind began to dull her spirit. It was then that Kristin felt a magnetic pull towards Michael Robertson, the new department head, despite him being married. A forbidden attraction quickly unfurled between them, their efforts to hide it crumbling under the weight of their connection. The discovery of love letters between Kristin and Michael by Gregory marked the beginning of the end for their marriage. Gregory, ever hopeful, fought to mend the rift, armed with a deep understanding of Kristin's struggles. But Kristin, having veered too far, pushed for a divorce, a clear sign of their broken bond. On the morning of November 6, 2000, as Kristin prepared for her day and Gregory battled illness at home, the strain between them had reached a peak. Kristin, still caring for Gregory, noticed his unusual stillness in the aftermath of their separation talk, even informing his workplace of his sickness and checking on him at lunch. That night, amidst an eerie calm, Kristin's call to emergency services broke the silence. Gregory had stopped breathing. Despite the dispatcher's guidance, Kristin was paralyzed by distress, unable to help. When help arrived, it was too late. Gregory was found lifeless, surrounded by rose petals, in a scene poignantly marking his last breath. An investigation later revealed a deadly mix of drugs in Gregory's system, pointing to the cause of his tragic end. The scene was grim. The room was scattered with empty painkiller vials and shredded wedding pictures on Greg's bed, a silent scream of his anguish. In her statement, Kristin disclosed that she had broached the subject of separation with Greg just the night before, only 17 months post-marriage. She confessed to feeling pressured into the union and depicted Greg as smothering, which spurred her yearning for space. The authorities concluded Greg's death was a suicide, the result of consuming lethal sedative drugs. Kristin, amidst her sorrow, proceeded to sign off on the cremation, seemingly coming to terms with this heartbreaking episode. However, Greg's circle of family and friends strongly contested the suicide theory. They highlighted Greg's well-known distaste for drugs, arguing he would never voluntarily take them. Their adamant stance brought the cremation to a pause and demanded an independent autopsy to seek the truth about Greg's sudden death. This insistence opened the door to considering homicide as a potential cause. Further toxicology reports were shocking, revealing high levels of fentanyl, a painkiller far more potent than morphine, in Greg's system, along with clonazepam and oxycodone, the latter informally known as hillbilly heroin. These findings offered a bleak view of his final hours. With the revelation that Greg could not have administered such a lethal mix himself, suspicion turned sharply towards Kristin. Her professional expertise and access to these drugs made her a prime suspect. Kristin's noticeably thin and troubled appearance at the police station, coupled with her drug history, deepened the suspicions against her. Kristin's story fluctuated during the investigation. Initially, she claimed Greg hadn't taken any medicine, but later suggested he might have overdosed on oxycodone. Oxycodone, akin to heroin in its effects, could cause deadly respiratory issues if not treated promptly. The police mulled over the likelihood of an accidental overdose amidst their probe. Kristin spoke of Greg's despair over their crumbling marriage, leading her to surmise to the authorities that he might have chosen to end his life. The investigation took a new turn on November 8th, when Russ Lowe, a colleague of Kristin's, informed the police about her affair with their boss, Dr. Robertson. This revelation shifted the investigative focus, uncovering evidence like passionate emails and files that linked Kristin closely to Dr. Robertson, who had notable expertise in fentanyl, a key detail in the case. It became clear that Gregory might have been seen as an obstacle by Kristin and Dr. Robertson due to his knowledge of Kristin's secret access to controlled substances. Dr. Robertson seemed to have helped Kristin keep her drug use hidden, hinting at a premeditated crime, yet proving this theory posed a significant challenge. During questioning, Dr. Robertson admitted awareness of Kristin's struggles with drugs. However, charges weren't immediately brought against them. Instead, their professional misconduct led to their dismissal from their positions. Kristin's situation worsened in January when a police raid at her house revealed drug remnants and gear, leading to her first arrest, although she was soon released on bail, preparing her for the forthcoming legal ordeal. The plot thickened with further investigation, especially upon examining Kristin's diary, which seemed more like a strategic attempt to paint Gregory's death as a suicide rather than a personal journal. Odd behaviors from Kristin, like buying a rose and dressing seductively on the day Gregory died, contrasted sharply with her claims of distress. Medical reports disclosed disturbing facts. Gregory had been unconscious for hours before his death, which occurred not long before his body was found. A mysterious bruise, possibly from an injection on his arm, further complicated the narrative. A concerning shortage of fentanyl and other drugs at Kristin's workplace suggested that she might have used her access to poison Gregory, administering fentanyl covertly. The prosecution began assembling its case, relying on toxicological data and medical insights, bolstered by a slew of circumstantial evidence. On June 25, 2001, Kristin was arrested and faced charges of first-degree murder. Spending 6 months behind bars, she was eventually granted bail, pending her trial. The crux of the case against her was motive. The prosecution argued that Kristin had a lot to lose. Her carefully maintained image of innocence was at risk due to her revived drug habits and an affair with Michael Robertson. The trial captivated everyone as the prosecution depicted a tale of deep betrayal and cunning, branding Kristin as the mastermind behind a meticulously planned murder. They claimed that Kristin first tried to kill Gregory with clonazepam, and when that didn't work, she fatally dosed him with fentanyl. According to the prosecution, Kristin then arranged the scene to mimic a suicide, scattering diary pages, rose petals, and a wedding photo around Gregory's lifeless body. With her expertise in biochemistry, Kristin was accused of using her scientific knowledge to ensure Gregory's death looked self-inflicted, attempting to mislead her colleagues and hide her manipulation of fentanyl. Her plans to alter toxicological findings were interrupted when she was reassigned to a different lab before the autopsy. The prosecution meticulously outlined Kristin's actions on the day Gregory died. They highlighted her morning call to Gregory's workplace to explain his absence and her visible distress at work, particularly during a moment spent crying in Michael's office. Kristin's midday return home and her purchase of a single red rose, confirmed by credit card records, were also noted. Key testimonies revealed Kristin's frequent communication with Michael on that critical day. Dr. Brian Blackburn, tasked with Gregory's autopsy, suggested that Gregory had been dead for at least an hour before help arrived, pointing to early signs of bronchopneumonia and a condition that hinted at prolonged breathing difficulties or unconsciousness. The autopsy findings, including a detailed examination of Gregory's physical state, challenged the idea that he could have staged his own death scene. Dr. Theodore Stanley, speaking for the prosecution, focused on fentanyl's lethal potency and its capacity to quickly suppress breathing, highlighting the drug's varied impact based on how it's administered. This evidence aimed to underscore the implausibility of Gregory's death being a simple case of self-medication gone wrong, painting a sinister picture of deliberate murder. The testimony regarding the presence of fentanyl in Gregory's system left critical questions unanswered. Dr. Stanley noted that fentanyl's typical avoidance of oral administration, due to how the liver processes it, complicated the case, with varying levels in Gregory's system suggesting multiple doses. This led the prosecution to theorize that Kristin might have used fentanyl patches on Gregory during his sleep, an assertion that, despite its intrigue, remained speculative without concrete evidence. The mysterious absence of 15 fentanyl patches from Kristin's former workplace added weight to suspicions of her involvement. Yet, the defense stood firm, acknowledging fentanyl's role in Gregory's death but arguing he took it himself, overwhelmed by personal despair. Kristin, taking the stand, painted a picture of her day on November 6th, starting with finding Gregory unwell and notifying his employer before she left for work. She claimed to have returned home to share a meal with him at lunch, only to find him unresponsive later that evening, leading to her emergency call. The prosecutor, however, cast doubt on her narrative, pointing to her past of deceit and drug misuse, and suggesting her knowledge of fentanyl made it a perfect, undetectable weapon. Contrary to Kristin's testimony, medical evidence suggested Gregory had been unconscious long before she claimed to have had lunch with him. The defense suggested that the combination of oxycodone and clonazepam could explain the lethal outcome without implicating Kristin directly, proposing Gregory might have taken the substances himself. Nevertheless, after extensive deliberation, the jury found Kristin guilty of first-degree murder, swayed by the argument that poison had been used. Kristin's appeal highlighted a potential oversight in her defense: the failure to test autopsy samples for fentanyl metabolites. Such tests could have clarified the mode of fentanyl's entry into Gregory's system, potentially disputing the claim that he was poisoned and challenging the foundation of her conviction. The appeal revealed a crucial oversight in handling the evidence, a breakdown in the chain of custody. The samples from Gregory's body were stored in a poorly sealed cardboard box, awaiting transfer to an external laboratory, a process delayed for over a day due to the absence of the designated courier. This procedural misstep cast a shadow over the evidence's reliability. At the heart of Kristin's appeal was the vulnerability of the samples left in the medical examiner's office. With access available to anyone possessing a key, Kristin's defense proposed the theory that the samples could have been tampered with, aiming to implicate her further in the crime. She highlighted internal dynamics and personal animosities within the office as potential motives for such interference. An incident on November 8, 2000, became a focal point for Kristin's argument. She referenced a conversation where Michael reportedly discussed examining a sample from Gregory's stomach, suggesting internal collusion and evidence manipulation at the medical examiner's office. The appellate court acknowledged shortcomings in Kristin's defense, particularly their failure to challenge the assertion that Gregory died from a fentanyl overdose and to request tests on the autopsy samples for fentanyl metabolites. Though the judges stopped short of overturning her conviction, they ordered a review to assess whether these errors might have influenced the trial's verdict. However, the U.S. Supreme Court underscored the principle that federal courts should respect state court rulings in such matters. effectively blocking Kristin's appeal from proceeding at the appellate level. As a result, her appeal was dismissed, and she remained behind bars. In a twist, Michael Robertson found himself embroiled in the legal aftermath, facing allegations of being complicit in Gregory's death. Authorities moved quietly, filing a charge of criminal conspiracy against him and securing a sealed arrest warrant. Rossum Robertson, once entangled in a controversial relationship with Kristin and implicated in the tragic case, now lives in Australia, working as a forensic toxicology consultant. Despite his current freedom, returning to the United States poses a significant risk for Rossum. An arrest warrant backed by a $100,000 bail awaits him due to allegations related to the death of Kristin's husband in 2000. In the aftermath of this heartbreaking incident, Gregory's family pursued justice through the legal system, filing a negligence lawsuit against the county. This lawsuit accused the county of failing to prevent Kristin from accessing and stealing a lethal quantity of drugs from the medical examiner's office. In 2006, their efforts bore fruit when a U.S. court ruled in their favor, granting them $147 million in civil damages, a substantial win in a saga that gripped the nation. Meanwhile, Rossum's fate diverged sharply from his earlier professional success. In February 2003, he received a life sentence without parole, found guilty of pilfering drugs from the laboratory and employing them in a fatal scheme against Gregory DeVere. This heinous act involved drugging Gregory before creating a false suicide tableau in their shared apartment, complete with red rose petals. Stay tuned to Crime Briefs for more enthralling stories from the dark side of human nature. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate notifications to keep up with our latest episodes. Join our vibrant community for a deep dive into true crime stories. Subscribe to Crime Tales TV today, and remember, stay vigilant and safe.